All right, welcome everyone. Today we've got Phil Michaels. Phil, how you doing, man?
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. You reached out about this Red Bull event and you said, hey man, I'm one of the pilots for local Tampa. What is it called? Like a flying machine? What are these things
They
called?
call it the Red Bull Flugtag. It was invented in Austria in 1992, and Red Bull's been running it for 35 years about, and they pick a new city every year, and this year they happen to pick Tampa. And so we applied, and I thought, you know what? I have enough on my plate, but in life, if you're not doing things just for the fun of it, then you're not living life to the fullest. So I figured, let's throw another thing on my plate right now.
And you messaged me, you're like, hey man, could you promote our team, right? Because it's for charity at the end of the day.
Yes, all of our team proceeds. What makes us different than the other teams is we are providing all proceeds to early childhood education for 0 to 6-year-old children via Tembo Education.
That's amazing.
Thank you.
And you said, yeah, post it, promote it. And I said, just come on the pod. Like, let's just talk about it. This is such a cool event. Our studio is right up the road from the river.
Yeah, and you had Red Bull waiting for us. So cheers.
Cheers, man. Thank you for doing the show.
Nice meeting you in person.
Good to meet you too. So you're the pilot of this Flugtag. What is it called?
Flugtag, yeah.
Flugtag.
So basically, Red Bull's notorious for just doing things for fun.
Yeah.
And it's wild and crazy, might not necessarily always have something to do with an energy drink, but you have to create a man-powered or woman-powered aircraft from scratch. It can't be prefabricated. It can't be motor-powered. It can't be electric. You have to build this craft, and you have to fly off of a 105-foot pier that's raised 22 feet in the air over the water. You run, sprint, have your team push you over the edge and wish and hope that you fly as far as you can.
Some of these videos are so funny because these guys will push one out, some crazy design, and it'll literally like fall off the cliff and not even fly 1 foot.
They said about 90% of them will just fly right down to the water immediately off takeoff. So
it's so when you say nothing prefabricated, like literally, correct? Like what materials are you using?
You can't show up with a glider that's already formed, right? Some people might show up with a hang glider and they're ready to go. So the first aspect of it is you got to pick a theme, so you know how to design it. And we picked the coconut pirates, and we're inspired by Disney's movie Moana. If you remember the Kakamora, the coconut pirates, and we thought that was fun. Everybody loves Moana, right? And we started designing an aircraft that would resemble some sort of theme around coconut pirates, and pirates being Tampa Bay, and coconuts, tropical, sunny weather. And we ultimately ended up picking the Coconut Cruiser as our aircraft. And we went through multiple iterations, similar to entrepreneurs here in Tampa Bay and the development process, the podcast, right? You have to go through multiple iterations till you find what works for you. So we started with some PVC pipe. We worked with some wood materials, metal materials, until we settled on foam, because foam is durable. It's like an insulation foam, but it's also very light. And they give you very specific constraints that you have to work within. So the wingspan can only be 18 feet. The weight of the entire pilot plus base plus aircraft, 150 pounds for me, 400 pounds total with everything combined. So height, length, everything's constrained.
And nothing prefabricated, meaning do you have to build it on site that day?
You can use materials that were prefabricated, but they can't have been previously put together.
So you show up with like a package of sorts, and you kind of put the remaining pieces in place and get the thing prepared to fly.
They want your craft 90% formed by the day before the flight. We load it into a hangar at the Tampa Bay Convention Center, and then we get to put on some final touches, and then the next morning we have to fly.
So can we watch some videos of this event? Because I've seen some videos on social, people have probably seen some stuff on YouTube. It's hilarious. It's hilarious. I think they did it a few years ago in Switzerland. Like in my head, I'm imagining maybe Geneva.
Yes.
Was it?
They pick, and there, David, there's a video on there of some of the eight best or most creative designs. If you scroll down on the homepage.
Right. So it's not all about, hey, how far can you fly? Like there's a creative aspect, how they judge these things.
Great question.
What the?
You could probably put it in full screen.
Oh my God.
What? Has no wings. Goes right in the water.
It has no wings. Like what was that strategy?
So the world record holder is from 2013, and they went 258 feet.
Holy shit.
Now the rules have changed every year, and they said do not follow any of the European versions. The US has very strict rules. So some of these videos that you see, the rules have changed since then. So
Wow.
we looked at some of the top designs. Look at this one. So this is one of the ones we received inspiration from, and the world record holder. And we found a kind of compilation of two. If you scroll to like the 8 minutes and 30 seconds.
Air pug is hilarious. For those just listening, it's
Right
a
there.
literal like huge stuffed bulldog with no wings. And the guy's riding on top of it.
So
Goes
this
off
is
the cliff.
This is another one we garnered inspiration from, and they have two massive wheels on the side. A great design though. But you'll notice if you pay very close attention to the top, you'll see a little slingshot catapult action, which is not allowed anymore either.
A slingshot. Let me see this thing. Ah.
And look at this baby glide.
Holy shit.
And if you zoom in on the tail,
Wow.
you'll see there's a little gear. See that gear on the back of the tail that's in the middle?
Uh-huh.
That wheel she was controlling with some wire. So it allows the flaps on the vertical stabilizer to move up and down, which helps, but it's pretty difficult to build that in without using power and electronics. And so you could see their wingspan is much larger as well compared to the constraints we have now.
Yeah, they went super technical with it. Like they built basically an airplane. Whereas those guys with the big pug, like what are they doing? They're just going for style points essentially.
Great question. So they judge you in 3 different categories. One is distance. The other is creativity on the design and costumes. And the third is your dance. So there's a 30-second dance before you even launch off the flight deck.
And they're all valued in equal proportions, right?
A third, a third, and a third.
A third, a third, a third. So you can nail the dance, and it's like a kind of a big part of receiving an overall high score.
And there's judges there too. And they said some of the judges will be undercover. So you have to, the team goes there early, and we have to be in costume early morning. And they're going to have the general public. By the way, this is open to the general public. They can come in the hangar early before the flight, and they can go vet some of the aircraft designs. And there's going to be some media there. There's going to be the judges undercover. And so you always have to be on, ready to go.
Wow. So, and this is on November 9th. What time?
So gates open at 12, and then the first flight's at 1. They're going to play the national anthem, and apparently the Air Force Red Bull team is going to be there doing a flyover.
Oh, no way.
So it's going to be really special. And then the award ceremony is around 3 to 4.
And then what are the awards? Does Red Bull write a check, or what do you get?
First place is a $25,000 value. It's tickets to the Grand Prix. Second place is you get a day in the life with a Red Bull athlete. And then third place, I think you get a indoor skydiving ticket.
Oh, wow.
And then, so that's one winner, a third, and a third. You know, I call it the triple Ds. And you have the design, you have the dance, and you have the distance. Then there's a second winner, which is the People's Choice Award. This one is live right now. You can vote. The coconutpirates.com, the in front of it. And from now until November 6th, you're able to vote for who's your favorite aircraft. So
I'm literally voting right now. Coconut, and I meant to save it for the episode. Coconut Pirates.
The coconutpirates.com.
Okay,
Got to put the in front of it. And it's right at the top. You can vote. And David, don't be shy. You can vote too.
Yeah,
Since you're already
pop
on
it up on
there.
the screen here. Let me see. Vote coconuts. So it takes you to a different website.
Go straight to the
Start
top.
the process.
There you go.
Here's all the
Scroll
competition.
down.
We won't even mention the competition, right? So is there only one Tampa team, or like what does that process look like for getting a team ready? Like, is there representation from different countries, or how does that work?
So people applied from all 50 states, and there was over 300 applicants, and we were lucky enough to be one of the finalists. There's 28 teams, and there we are. Yes, that's it, David. And just by selecting it and the name turning white, that means you selected it. So you can scroll down and hit next.
I'm glad you brought that up because I was confused for a second. It seems like you're not voting for them, but yeah, as long as it highlights it, basically, you can scroll down and
you
click
got
next.
it. As soon as the name turns white, that means you selected it. The UI UX isn't the best, but yes. So that means you just voted for us. Thank you. Appreciate
2 votes. Check.
2 votes. Check. And hopefully your audience likes us too. And I have a little sneak preview for your team and your audience.
Finish
at
the
end, but
50 states. So anyone can apply from your state.
anyone can apply
states.
out of all 50 states. And we were lucky enough to be one of the finalists. And there's going to be 250,000 people there. 200 boats are already registered to be in the harbor. It's going to be right in front of Jackson's American Social, Tampa Bay Convention Center, right on the water. And there's going to be an MC. It's going to be a great event. It's free, by the way, to the general public. You might as well go. It's going to be a great Saturday, family friendly. It's going to be so much fun. And we have music and
it's
dancing.
30 teams, right? You say
it's about 28 teams. There's 4 honorary teams that is sponsoring Red Bull. So they're going to have a team just for fun that it's not part of the voting. So Hard Rock Casino has a team. Racetrack Gas Station has a team. So it'd be really funny to see what they came up with. Motor Enclave has a team.
They're just going to drive a car off the cliff straight into the water.
Woody's Car Wash has a team.
Wow. So it's like local businesses essentially that sponsor the event, and then they get to have an honorary, what is it called? A Flugtag?
Flugtag.
Flugtag. Is that a...
spelled interesting? I think so these are the world record holders. They're called the Chicken Whisperers.
Oh my God. Let's watch this.
And
so
they
guys
are
and a couple
2013.
gals in chicken suits. Here's their, what is it? You said a 30-second dance in the beginning.
30-second dance, and there's music playing, and then you have 30 seconds to run off the cliff.
Oh shit. Ooh.
258 feet.
Wow. Wow. Still going. Incredible.
And the rules have changed since then, but within the guidelines they gave us, we think we have a good chance. And then there's some judges. There's going to be some famous individuals there. And the audience loves chickens. So
see, they have a good strategy, right? They built a super technical, essentially glider. Like there's nothing sexy or fancy or attractive about the glider. Like the glider itself, is made to go far, but then they turned up kind of the funny factor with the chicken outfits. That was a good strategy because then they're getting points for the dance and the outfits and all that. And then they can hit that high mark. What's y'all's strategy going in without revealing, the whole thing?
I like to go all out. And so we have spent a lot of time and energy and effort since August. I just decided, you know what, I'm going to reach out to one of my close friends, and without hesitation, he's like, I'm in. This is it. And then I said, well, we're going to need more than 2 team members, so let's keep recruiting. And you're allowed to have 4 flight crew members, and then you have 1 pilot. And just started galvanizing, and eventually one of my mentors was nice enough to offer his workshop to us. So every weekend, we've just lost our weekends completely because we've just been building every single weekend.
How long have you been working on this for?
Since August. So
wow.
I was there till about 10 p.m. last night. I'm going again tonight because we have some finishing touches to put on. But the aircraft and base are done. We are now putting on the design features to make it very coconut piratey.
And so you're probably not going to have the opportunity to test this thing out in its full form, right?
2 hurricanes did not help out either.
Holy
and
shit.
Some teams dropped out as a result, like I was mentioning. So it's set everyone back a little bit, but we've just continued to push. And being an entrepreneur like yourself, where you've had to pull those all-nighters, you've had to just push through, do whatever it takes mentality, that's really helped in these tough times with projects going on. People drop off, family things come up, right? We had one team member, a tree fell on his house, so he had to cancel a whole weekend. Another one had a wedding. Another one had an entrepreneurial conference. So things happen, life happens, but at the end of the day, the result is what matters the most.
Well, it's all for good cause too. Right?
Yes.
It's for children's education.
0 to 6-year-old children. So all of our team proceeds go to Tembo Education to educate 0 to 6-year-old children. And we're going to have some of that on our aircraft as well. So
that's awesome. Very noble cause to support. And what did Red Bull think about these hurricanes and some of the other teams that are not from the area? Were they looking at this like a problem? Were they scared in some way to
Red Bull does a great job, and I'm sure it's not the first time they've had to deal with something like this.
Right.
So they were very generous with their time, and they were nice enough to say, listen, we completely understand if teams need to drop out, and I think some did. And so they said, if you need any help, you can. I mean, I FaceTimed them one time while we were in the build. Hey, what do you think of this? Is this within the limitations? And just going back and forth. They're very cavalier and friendly about things. So they're strict with the rules, but they're also very nonchalant about how they handle the
it's so
hiccups.
silly on purpose. You know, it's not supposed to be this super serious thing, but I do get the point of these rules and these regulations. So you have almost like a representative from Red Bull you can bounce off of, like, hey, is this cool? Hey, we're thinking about this as you're developing this Flugtag.
Yes, they've made themselves so available. But what's funny is we have these Red Bull meetings with their team, and some of the teams, I mean, even last week, we're like, what are the dimensions again?
Right.
And we're thinking, wow, if that question's coming up this late in the game, we might have a real chance at this.
Holy shit. So you're moving in this with confidence. You feel like you guys are putting together something good here.
There's one team that happened to have 2 wins under their belt from previous occasions. So it's going to be interesting to see, because some of these teams are formed with real contractors and engineers and fabricators,
right.
and we're just kind of this ragtag team that I put together last minute. I have no business being in the aircraft building business, but I happen to be in it now.
So some of these teams are doing this multiple years, like they can come back. So how does that work?
Apparently there's some teams that travel every year to the next Flugtag location and try to compete.
Oh, wow.
If they make it in, of course, they apply.
If they make it in, but for whatever reason they've made it. Wow. Well, hey, maybe the Coconut Pirates do very well, and this is like a normal thing you get to do every late summer.
I've been joking with the team that, hey, if this works out, maybe we'll be a traveling Flugtag team.
Holy
and we'll just
shit.
hop around to Austria next.
That's hilarious. Do you know any details about why they chose Tampa?
You know, I'm sure they run a market analysis on where's the best place, where their markets are thriving.
And they've been here before, too.
They've been here before.
2011,
and they seem to really like Tampa. I mean,
Yeah.
who doesn't like Tampa? We were just talking about that in the beginning. It's such
Place
a great
is
city.
Awesome. It's been a weird vibe, of course, and it's been challenging the last few weeks with these storms. But the weather's been beautiful. It's starting to get cleaned up. People are putting their lives back together, and there's a light at the end of the tunnel for us. And it's just fun that this event is, I guess that would be next week, right? I think it's about 2 weeks.
Yeah, 2 weeks out. And
2 weeks out. So, you have this like fun event on kind of the tail end of these horrific storms. And I think, we'll have the holidays and New Year's, and things will be back to normal pretty quickly.
Literally right before this podcast, I just got off the phone with Sheriff Chronister, and I was singing his praises of how amazing they did to just be prepared. And you can see the dichotomy between how governments implement their strategy for when crises happen and occur, and how prepared we were, and the aftermath, just how warm and welcoming the community was when everyone came back. And they've just done a tremendous job. It's almost like things didn't happen. And I'm really proud of him and the team. and just our local community coming together.
Before you came in, I had on Riley Tuff. He's the director of emergency management at the city of Tampa. It's at the city of Tampa, but I think his office is within the fire department, kind of how, I don't know exactly how the chain of command works, but I was telling him that it builds a lot of confidence as a member of the public to see your local government do such a good job with this stuff. When you see the sheriff's department out on John boats picking people up, you see the fire department out there trying to do what they can, the night of the storm, the winds are howling, the waters are rising, these guys are out there saving people. And then you see the effort, like some of these guys in mobility and in stormwater and the sanitation workers out there picking up trash 24/7. You know, they don't get a break. These guys are out there consistently, constantly cleaning up this thing, helping people. It's fucking awesome.
Even
man.
at
It makes
Home
you feel
Depot.
good. It makes you feel like we're not alone, like as a citizen.
Absolutely.
you
You're
know?
taken care of, and
Yeah.
people are there for you, and your money's going to where it should. And
No
it's
shit, that's a
protecting
big
people.
one. Yeah, that's a big one for real. Like you want to see why we pay taxes, right? You kind of want to get what you pay for, and in some senses, you're frustrated with certain things that the government does locally, federally, the whole thing. But when a disaster strikes, to me, that's like the ultimate form of government, right? That's where they need to step up to the plate,
And
and they've done that.
It's the perfect litmus test too. It's a great barometer for how well they fare when things hit the fan.
Yeah,
And my friends that are in Asheville, North Carolina are not singing the same praises. And, granted that is a different situation. It still shows how quickly and how well the team responds when called to action. So anybody can do well when there's no crisis, but when
right.
the true colors come out, that's when you see who the B and C players are.
It's true. It's true. And we were talking too about how Tampa was blowing up. You mentioned, you went to school at UT and you got a job, bounced out, came back, I think in 2019, you said, which is where we were talking about how fun it was and Tom Brady and the back-to-back Lightning championships. When that's happening in a city, what are you going to complain about, right? Like things are going well, especially from local government. Like you look at these people in local government, and as long as your toilet works and, you take the trash out and it gets picked up and hopefully the potholes are getting reduced day by day, what else is there to focus on? But yeah, you're right. The true test is a disaster like this.
Even in the markets, I always say this to my entrepreneurial peers that when economies grow, it's fine. Everybody looks like a winner. But when they start to dip and you have that ebb and flow, it weeds out all the B and C players, all the people that were not really in this for the long haul, that were not able to overcome the obstacles, the challenges that came their way. It allows the ones that are the A players to thrive when difficulty occurs, right? And even with podcasts, right? We were talking about that, how everyone and their mother had a podcast during COVID, including myself. And then the ones that are really in this for the long haul end up maintaining that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's true with anything, right? I think when times are good and the iron is hot, people can strike and make their quick money or grow quickly. And yeah, like the true test is time and the ebb and the flow of the market. It's expressed in everything, especially in my industry, like in real estate. Like when times are good in real estate and the market is hot, it's statistically proven. Like real estate licensees get handed out like candy. Thousands of people get licensed. We saw that in the last few years. And now I think as things are softening up, we're at like record lower like applications for real estate licenses. You see that in my industry too. I just think the reason why the podcast has been sustained throughout the last couple years at least is just because I enjoyed doing it. I think at the end of the day, if you like what you're doing, then you don't worry about the market, you know, if it's good or bad, or, this hurricane got in the way of some awesome podcasts we already have recorded and saved up. But, my interest changes, right? Like the hurricane comes and now I want to know how our city manages that hurricane and how they prepared for it and what they weren't expecting that came from the disaster. And then what are we going to do in the future? Like, how are we going to build back our infrastructure in a better way? So when these storms come again, which they will, how do we get in a better position? It's like, so if you're always curious and you're always interested, I don't know, I can probably sustain this for a while.
I mean, Tampa's probably my favorite city in the world to live. And people always ask me why that is. And I finally figured it out. And it took me moving back here to not only appreciate it and realize that I took it for granted, but also come to the conclusion that I did about why this is my favorite city. And I finally nailed it. It's geographical proximity, Garrett. You can get to whatever you want within a 15, 20-minute radius. I mean, I'm talking nightlife to shopping, sports arenas, concerts, art museums, the airport, the river walk, even beaches.
Yeah.
Everything is within a 15, 20-minute radius, and you don't realize how dramatically that changes your day-to-day quality of life until you've lived somewhere else and you come back. And that's what happened to me. I had moved away. I lived all over the world, from Nigeria to Dubai to Boston, came back in 2019. And I was like, wow, every city doesn't have this. And a lot of people live in places that they could be spending a temporary amount of time in and just visit, where they should choose. And I think COVID led to a lot of this too, where it forced people to realize, oh, I don't need to live in New York because my job's in New York. I can live in the mountains where I wanted to originally and just commute if I need to, or work remotely. And I can't think of a better place to do that than Tampa, because the quality of life is incredible. It's
You really do
insurmountable.
have everything here. It's kind of interesting. I mean, even the beaches, you know, on a good day, call it a half hour to get to some of the best beaches in the entire country. Obviously, in the summertime, you know, at the peak of the season, it can take a while to get out there from here. But yeah, the point is, we live in an unbelievable place. We have the benefits of Florida, meaning, you know, it's pretty easy to do business here. You've got 0% income tax. You're have some of the best fishing and outdoor sports in the entire world. But then you also have the local flair, right? Tampa is such a beautiful city. We got a long way to go. I get frustrated all the time with some of the potholes and some of the BS. You know, it's like
It's an
okay.
eclectic mix, though. You
It
know,
is.
most Floridian cities don't have the diversity that we have here. I mean, you could get any cuisine you want here.
Right.
It's every Florida city can't say that. And
True.
you know, going back to your point about the beaches, we're not just talking any Florida beach. TripAdvisor ranks St. Pete Beach #1 in the U.S., #5 in the world. You have sports teams winning championships. You have some of the best art museums. My girlfriend and I love to go to art museums, and also, you know, plays and musicals. You have Straz Center right here. You have the Dolly Museum. You have everything you could ever ask for. And if you need to travel, you also have one of the best airports in the world. And you could fly anywhere you want from Tampa, pretty much.
It's a good life, man.
It's more people need to hear about this, but not too many.
Not too many.
I know you're Tampa through and through, so
It's
you're
funny,
one of the
people,
few.
some people have commented on our videos like, you're a part of the problem. You know, you're making it seem like this is the best place in the world. And then a bunch of people move here. And it's like, how blessed are we though? Like, we get to live in this awesome place. Why the hell wouldn't we talk about it? And number one and number two, I don't think you can stop people. Like, the cat is out of the bag, you know, between Tom Brady and the Lightning and the sports stuff, but also Visit Tampa Bay. Like, we had Santiago on the show who runs Visit Tampa Bay. They're doing marketing internationally for Tampa. And when you put up a picture of like a beautiful, you know, picture of downtown with palm trees and the Bayshore Boulevard and like snowy New York, it sells itself.
Yes.
I just think people are always going to move here.
And you have great universities, you have great entertainment.
Yeah.
There's an intellectual capital that people have tapped into. You have Michelin star restaurants. It's a great city, and I'm just really grateful and honored to live here. And
Yeah.
I'm from the Northeast, like most people, so that are in Tampa. I think you're one of the outliers, but we love your city.
Well, thanks for being here. When did you move down?
So originally came for UT for undergrad.
What did that look like at the time? Like, why did you pick UT? That must have been a little bit of a bold choice back then.
I wanted to get as far away from New Jersey and Philly as possible,
there you
get
go.
to the warm weather, and visited 7 colleges. And the last school I visited was UT, and I immediately fell in love. You have a pool in the middle of campus. You're on the river. The weather's gorgeous. And so I immediately moved here. It was an easy decision as a 17-year-old high school kid, and then fell in love and just kept going, joined the Entrepreneurship Center, worked for the New York Yankees team doctor, I didn't know at the time that the Yankees are mostly living here and just commute to New York when they need to. And one of the things that shocked me was how people were wearing sweatpants and sweatshirts here. And I'm like, these people are crazy. And then a year and a half later, I became that guy wearing sweatshirts and sweatpants.
It's 70 degrees. Let me put on a hoodie. Yeah.
And I had always heard about Southern hospitality. Didn't know what Publix was. So I go in Publix, my first experience in a Publix grocery store. And I have all my stuff. It's around Mother's Day time, and put my stuff in the cart. I'm walking toward the registers, and a woman came out from her register, and she's welcoming me to her line. And I'm like, what's going on here? I started looking behind me, thinking she's talking to someone she knew. And she's like, no, you sweetheart, come over here. And I'm like, okay, I've never seen this before.
They don't do that in Jersey?
They don't do that in Jersey for sure. I've never seen a cashier come from behind her register and out through the conveyor line. So I start putting my stuff on the conveyor belt, and she's ringing my stuff up. It's Mother's Day. So I bought my mom a Mother's Day card. She takes the card, opens it up, and starts reading it. And she's like, oh my gosh, your mom's going to love this. This is adorable. And I'm looking behind me at the people in line behind me thinking, you would get shot for doing something like that in New Jersey. That's very private.
Hurry up.
Yeah, hurry up. This is a very private thing to read someone's Mother's Day card. And I finally realized at that moment, this is what they've been talking about, the Southern hospitality. Everyone's just warm and friendly and having a conversation, and people ride the escalators here, where in New Jersey they're walking and running up and down the escalators.
My buddy, he's been on the show a few times, Frank DiGiacomo. He always talks about how Tampa is this metropolitan city where there is business getting done, right? And you do have these larger organizations here. And there is a certain pace to that for sure. And people are in suits in downtown, and there's that whole thing. But he says there's this like vacation-esque vibe with the palm trees and the weather, and he's like, the energy level is softer here because he lives in Manhattan and he moved down here a few years ago. And he's like, that's the biggest difference. He's like, you can do kind of the Manhattan thing here in terms of business, and there's a lot of entrepreneurial people, and there's a lot of people doing big things here. But he's like, the overall tone is so much more relaxed.
That's 100% correct. And every time we go to visit my family and friends in Jersey and Philly, we feel it more and more.
Right.
They're stressed about things we're not stressed about here.
Yeah.
And it's almost like they're always living in the fight or flight response. But here, you have that same entrepreneurial energy and success and work ethic, but you're a little toned down. You know, you're not.
You ever been to the East Coast of Florida, like Jupiter South, Fort Lauderdale, Palm Beach, Delray, Miami, that whole thing? I would say that Southern hospitality line might fade away once you get south of Tampa.
I would agree with you.
Yeah, like, you know, Central Florida, Tampa's got some. You do have some of those Southern accents like in Stark and up in the Panhandle and all that, but I can tell you it fades away. Once you start to get to South Florida, it's a little bit different of a dynamic.
I always wondered why that was. Why are there more Northeasterners on the East Coast versus the West Coast, and there's more Midwesterners? And I don't know if this is true. I haven't fact checked it, but a guy who's Tampa through and through had told me that, you know, back in the day, the way families moved was they would just follow the interstate, and they would get off where they thought looked cool. And there was a highway directly, you know, to the Midwest from the West Coast.
75.
And then on the East Coast, you had the same thing, 95, right?
Yeah.
So there was a lot of Midwesterners that just happened to get off here and said, okay, this is our home.
That's the exact reason initially, you know, when those highways first came down. And then generations later on, would vacation here, and their kids would love Florida and stay here. That's how I met my wife. Like, my wife came here because her family had always vacationed in Sarasota. They're from Indiana. They're from the Midwest. And so my wife growing up, right, if she vacations in Florida, by the time she's like 18, 19, 20 years old, she's like, screw this snow. Where am I going to go? Well, Florida. I've been going there my whole life. Boom, she moves down. So many Midwestern families have been coming to the West Coast of Florida for so many years. And so they know it. And their original reason is those interstate highways, 100%.
It worked.
And it's funny though, too, because you go to the East Coast and even like the driving dynamic is different. The people on the East Coast are now, if you live around here, this is like tough to hear because you think that these people are crazy on the roads, which they are. But on the East Coast, it's like 100x. The people around like Fort Lauderdale and Miami, the driving on I-95, it's like fucking Mad Max. Like you do not want to be rolling around there if you're used to a slower pace lifestyle. Those people will yell at you, honk at you to get the hell out of the way. Like it's a little bit different of a mentality down there for sure.
That's why we like to visit Miami and not live there.
That's exactly
I mean, even just getting an Uber was difficult.
Oh
there.
yeah.
I mean, things that you don't stress about here in Tampa. The quality of life is just insurmountable.
It's a happy medium.
Well, this is a question for you then. How do you think migration is going to change in the U.S. now that the interstate thing is no longer the means that people make their decisions for where they're going to move?
Well, COVID changed everything. I think we talked about this a little bit, but in social media and the internet, right? The availability to check out new spots in the last few years just didn't exist before. You can go on social and scroll a new town and like find this podcast and find out everything you want to know, right, about the Tampa Bay area or Florida in general. And we're already seeing that. Like in my real estate business, we get calls all the time from people that live on the East Coast that were originally from the Northeast. Their grandparents or themselves had a place in Palm Beach. Palm Beach has become very expensive, and they start to look over here on this coast. And so you kind of have this cross-pollination in Florida happening already. You're seeing a lot of that in Naples. So Naples is like probably the most expensive area on the west coast of Florida. $20 million houses, stuff like that. We are starting to get at that level, but Palm Beach has been there for a long time, right? So the people that have always traditionally in their head wanted to move to Palm Beach, let's say from New York, and they've been planning on it for 10, 20 years. Well, now it's so expensive, they're starting to look at other areas of Florida. So I think number one, in Florida itself, you're going to have this more of a mix where that classic tale of it's Midwestern on the West Coast and Northeastern on the East Coast. I think those lines are getting more blurry, and that'll continue to happen. Another thing too is from a country perspective, like from the nation's perspective, man, growing up, dude, I don't even think I knew anyone from California growing up on this West Coast. So I was born in Tampa. I lived in Tampa through elementary school. And then after my parents split, my mom and I moved to Sarasota. So I did like middle school, high school, Sarasota. So I saw both of those cities on the West Coast of Florida growing up. We met like a couple people from the West Coast, like literally. Like there was a kid that moved from Seattle, which was like, Seattle, like holy shit, that's like fucking, that's as far away as you could get, right? And then California, you might have David's from Washington, right? Our producer, and then you'd meet like one kid from California. And then professionally too, like after I graduated college and I was working as a real estate agent, same thing. We deal with a ton of Midwesterners, people from Ohio, people from Indiana, all these places, and then a couple people from the Northeast. In the last 4 years since COVID, we have a staggering amount of people from California, Washington, West Coast, and now here locally from New York. You never saw New York and Jersey and California plates in Tampa when I was growing up in the 90s. Like you just didn't really see that. Now you see that in an extreme way. I think it's because the other coast, which got a lot of those people, is so expensive, like ridiculously expensive. And now they're kind of feeding out in different areas. But I think mostly it's because we have something incredible to offer that maybe we always knew, but now the whole world knows.
Yeah, COVID definitely expedited that. I mean, like I was sharing with you, we had 7 couples visit us, and 6 of them ended up moving here during COVID from Colorado, California, New York, Carolinas, because they saw what we were able to do during that crisis compared to everybody else. I mean, we were turned down at hotels in New Jersey when we were visiting our family because we had a Florida license. So we couldn't even visit my family because when you go to check in, you hand your driver's license and your credit card. They were like, sorry, we're not accepting Floridians. We had to find a mom and pop shop hotel in Ocean City, a little bit farther away from my mother's house, to make sure we were able to stay there safely.
There's a weird bigotry thing with Floridians and the rest of the country, especially in the Northeast and especially on the West Coast. When they hear you're from Florida, they get weird. They're like, what's going on? All we see on the news is like people fucking doing bath salts and Florida man. Like we have this weird reputation. And again, my buddy Frank talks about it. Like when he visits home, they're like, what is living in Florida like?
Well, and that was heightened during that time because
yeah.
what was depicted on the media, we looked like super spreaders and everyone in Florida is dying. And so when my friends came here to visit, they were like, oh, wow, you guys are open and we can go to a restaurant. And I was like, we're not only going to a restaurant, we're taking you to a bar tonight. And they just were shocked that
Yeah.
was even possible.
David, what was it like? Are you mic'd up? What was it like when you went back home to Washington? You know, you've moved to Florida. What happens when you tell a friend or a family member like, yeah, I'm in Florida now?
It's just always been like a dream like vacation spot, but now I live here, so it's like vacationing every single day.
Hell yeah.
You know,
But what do those people say? Do they think you're weird for like, oh, you're from Florida? Like,
no, it's more like, well, my family and friends, they're more like kind of jealous, you know, they want to go to Florida too. So just the opportunity to move here is pretty cool. But like, I don't know, people in the public, I guess they would be like, Washington has a very weird perspective of Florida, you know?
right. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. They look at us almost like, I think you're right. I think COVID put a bad connotation on us that maybe we didn't have before. I think before that it was like old people, sunshine, beaches, retirees. And now it's like, fuck, I don't know. We have like, we're like the conspiracy capital and we have all these crazy news articles.
It's almost like everybody laughs at you at first and then you see the data and you see everyone moving in. You're like, okay, maybe they aren't so crazy. Maybe they were right.
That's the thing. The numbers speak for themselves. There's a reason why millions of people have moved to Florida in the last few years because it's an awesome place to live.
We love it. And you still get that culture, though, the diversity that you have in the other states and cities. I always talk about the U.S. that we have basically 50 different countries in one that you have the opportunity to visit. I mean, I had friends in Jordan that weren't even allowed to leave their homes unless they were going to the hospital or the grocery store. If they wanted to go to another country, they couldn't just leave. Whereas in the U.S., you have the ability to maneuver around 50 different states within the same country. People take that for granted. And I heard this scary statistic the other day that only 38% of Americans even own a passport.
Wow.
And those are just the ones that have one. I bet you it's even less that used it. And then there's even less that probably traveled outside the Caribbean.
You've done some serious traveling. Did living abroad give you it sounds like it gave you an appreciation for this country, but how stark was that? Like when you were living in Dubai, what did that feel like? Did it make you miss America?
Every single time I travel outside the US, it makes me appreciate what we have here more and more. And I wish every American had to live in a slum of a developing nation and not do charity work, actually have to survive and live there and see what it's like. And I guarantee people will be so much more appreciative of what we, and don't get me wrong, it doesn't mean we don't have areas we can improve upon, but live in a developing nation for a while. I've lived in arguably the worst slums in the world in Nigeria, and they have a wealthy area, of course, where most of the expats live, but you go to the mainland and you see what conditions people are living in with an average birth rate of 5.5 children per mother. They are the fastest growing population, fourth fastest growing phone market in the world. And this was the impetus for me starting Tembo Education, because I saw all these different countries and the children there. And I thought, how could we educate people to solve their own problems? So we're not just giving the fish, we're teaching people how to fish, that old adage. And when I looked into the different markets of education, I saw there was two things being done, either a mobile app or building schools, because everyone's doing water, health, housing, but those things can be taken away from you and people can donate them. But I figured, why not use a more sustainable approach? Let's educate people to solve their own problems. And when I looked into the age group that's most imperative, it's 0 to 6. 90% of the brain is formed by that age. So I figured, okay, 0 to 6. Let me see what's already being done in the world for these two. It was mobile apps and schools. The issue with mobile apps, only smartphones can use them. And the majority of the world did not have a smartphone at this time in 2015. So I said, okay, smartphones, the ones that do have them can't afford the mobile data to run the app consistently. So smartphones and mobile apps are not the answer. Let's look into schools. I was blown away, Garrett, with how many schools are in developing nations. You'd be surprised. But the issue is they're more like four walls, little to no materials. Teacher attendance is low. Sometimes they don't even have a curriculum. So I said, okay, schools do not equate to an education. What are people using every day? Text messages. It's the most used communication platform in the world still to this day. So I figured, let's educate the children using text messages. So we send one activity per day to the parent's phone. Parent educates their child, and then we reward the parent for educating their child to incentivize them using behavioral economics. And people always ask, well, how much can you really fit in a text message?
Right.
We need to get away from screen time. Kids are dependent on their phones. The American Pediatric Association recommends no screen time for children 2 and under. And I'll go off on a rant on that in just a moment. But this allows you to engage with your child, not provide a screen for them to be a babysitter. It texts the parent one activity per day. Parent educates their child on that day's activity instructions, and it covers all 4 domains of learning: language, cognitive, motor, and social emotional. And it's derived from research done by Harvard, Pearson, Lego, PBS, and it's based on the Harvard Center for the Developing Child's developmental milestones. So it's covering all the developmental milestones of the brain as they age. Because I figured, if you're going to make an investment, right, you're an investor, are you going to do it when you have 10% of the impact or 90% of the impact?
Mm-hmm.
In Finland and South Korea, they typically perform the highest in early childhood education assessments. Why is that? Their smartest teachers teach the youngest children. In the US, it's the exact opposite. Our smartest teachers typically are professors at major universities. There, it's the exact opposite, and they have the same prestige as a doctor, a lawyer, and usually it's the top 3% of the graduating class of the education programs that are allowed to teach the youngest children, because they know they're going to have 90% of the ROI at that age, 0 to 6. So that's why I picked that age group, and why I started it originally in Nigeria. We're in the US, we're in 7 countries now, 5 languages. But the reason I started in Nigeria is sub-Saharan Africa has more 0 to 6-year-old children than anywhere in the world.
Wow.
And they have an average birth rate of 5.5 children per mother in Nigeria. So I figured, if I can build it in Nigeria, I can build it anywhere.
Man.
But we're in the US as well. And that was really the impetus for wanting to educate children. I really think that Nelson Mandela nailed it on the head when he said, education is the most powerful weapon to change the world. That's how we're going to lead to solutions globally and long-term. You know, right now, a lot of people are betting on the Elon Musks of the world, the Bill Gateses of the world, Steve Jobs. Why not create more of them? More global change makers. Instead of relying on one person, let's mitigate our risks and not put, just like Elon's trying to create a multi-planetary species, right? He wants to bring humans to Mars. To mitigate our risk, hedge our bets, we should do the same with some of these global change makers. So our goal is to create more global change makers, educating the earliest age possible. And that's really the impetus for Tembo.
Well, education is the reason why America performed so well over the last couple centuries and became the world's greatest superpower, is because we attracted talent like Elon Musk's of the world to one place.
Yeah.
We had the best education. All the greatest minds came to America. And look what we achieved in the 20th century.
It's incredible. And that's the key, really, the entrepreneurial education. Instead of teaching kids what to learn, let's teach them how to learn.
So what's an example of something that would pop up on a parent's text message?
Sure. So an example of an activity, they're all play-based activities. So it's meant to be fun for the child and the parent. So they're not using screens. They're actually engaging with their child. So an example of a developmental milestone for a child is object permanence. So for example, this Red Bull can, if I cover this with a napkin, a child thinks it's disappeared. And this is why children love hide and seek. So when you take the napkin off and they still see the Red Bull can, they're like, wow, they're amazed, they're fascinated that it's still there. Because that concept, that developmental milestone, is a huge developmental milestone for the brain. It's called object permanence. And these are some of the play-based activities that we are stimulating the brain with in the occipital and temporal lobe of the brain to make sure that these children are learning properly. And so they're meant to be fun. They're meant to be easy, quick, because everybody doesn't download an app. No one wants to download another app, right? You don't want to read another email, but everybody answers their text messages. And so we wanted it to be as simple and seamless for parents. You're busy. There's so much information out there right now, and it's overwhelming. And people have cognitive dissonance on what's the right thing. So we're not teaching them what to think. We're just preparing their brains to be better at receiving and assimilating knowledge. And they're simple.
So almost like a Montessori Academy type setup through text messages.
Yes.
To not only underdeveloped countries, but you're also doing it here in the United States.
Exactly. And we don't dumb down the curriculum for any other country. We use the highest standard. It's typically considered the gold standard for that age group, Harvard Center for the Developing Child. And we cover all 4 domains of learning. So language, cognitive, motor, and social emotional. And like I was mentioning earlier, the issue is the American Academy of Pediatrics is recommending no screen time for children 2 and under. How many parents have you seen handing over their screens, the iPads, to the kids for them to play on? Some pediatricians are seeing one of the developmental milestones you test for is, can a child grasp a ball with all 5 fingers? So the way they test for this is they'll roll the child a ball across the floor. The child is not supposed to necessarily grab it perfectly, but did they reach for it with all 5 fingers? What they're finding is children that are exposed to too much screen time are reaching for it with 1 finger as if it's on a screen. They can't discern the difference between 2D and 3D images. That's how bad it's gotten.
I'm guilty of it. My wife and I are guilty of it. We try to limit screen time as much as possible, but if we're in a 3-hour trip, to go see family, like we had a wedding over in Palm Beach, that's a long trip to have a baby in the back. And at some point during the trip, we feel it's appropriate to toss back the screen to put on. We usually watch like Trash Truck. We don't do Coco Melon or anything like that. We like to think of ourselves as a little more educated in that way, I guess. We don't watch the stupid shows, but like, I think that it could be used as a tool. It doesn't need to be the end-all be-all solution. And the scariest part about this conversation is we don't know the long-term effects. We don't know how that baby will end up 1, 2, 3, and 4 years old that's had an iPad, right, for their entire early life. What are they going to act like when they're 25 years old? We just don't know. And we're not going to know until 20 years from now. That's what's frightening, is how does it all end up? And how do we stack up as a country if that's how our parents, including myself, I'm guilty of it, treat our children versus other countries that don't have that same standard?
Well, and that's why we can't play the blame game. We have to make it easier for parents to do well. And that's really the goal of Tembo, is how can I make it easy for parents to become better parents, to make it friendly, play-based, fun, engaging, but simple, so they don't have to download another app, so they don't have to answer an email. It's a text message, and it's once a day.
Are some of those text messages as simple as, like you described earlier, like take a cup, put a napkin over it?
Not only that, it tells you exactly what to do and say step by step. So there's no cognitive bandwidth being utilized. It's meant to be a plug and play model. That way any parent can use it. The busy parents, we have private school educated children in Washington, D.C. with 2 master's degree parents using it. We have some of the poorest, children in developing nations using it. So it can work across any socioeconomic class, any culture. We're educating people in different languages. We have 5 different languages right now. So it's meant to be a plug and play model, turnkey. So you're busy. You don't have time to think of, what else do I have to educate my child? What should I say? What should I not say? This is meant to be a turnkey process. So you don't have to do the thinking. We do that for you to help provide the parent with the best tools necessary, so you don't have to be overwhelmed with how much information is out there and the decision fatigue that requires as well.
And remind me again how the Coconut Pirates and the Red Bull event kind of benefit. Is this a nonprofit?
Yes. So it's, as you can see on my shirt, the Beware of the Kakamoras. So the inspiration behind the Coconut Pirates is from the Disney movie Moana. And we thought that was family friendly and kid based. And so all our team proceeds for our specific team goes toward Tembo Education to educate 0 to 6-year-old children. So we actually, that's our site. But if you, David, if you go to the Coconut Pirates website, there's a way, if you click shop, we created these t-shirts. I don't have it on yet. Mine's actually on its way to be delivered. But if you see, there's a shirt, there's a hat there, and those are embroidered, by the way, too. So they're really nice. And see on the back of the shirt, David, there's a Tembo Education QR code that brings you right to Tembo's website. So we're asking all of our friends, family, and supporters, and your audience is more than welcome to wear it as well. Anyone who wants to attend the event, it's free. It's on Saturday, November 9th, and we're asking that you wear this shirt in support of the Coconut Pirates and Tembo Education.
Well, shit, let's order a couple. It's funny you put the QR code on the t-shirt. With me and an intern at my real estate company a couple of years ago did the QR code on a shirt, and we were going to, same deal, right? Go around town, promote it, the whole thing. The problem was we did the QR code too big. And what happens when you put on a shirt? It wrinkles, it's fabric, it folds. No one could scan it. It was a total disaster. But again, entrepreneurship, right?
Iterations.
You learn iterations.
I love it.
Yeah, it was fun.
Well, and this you'll be at the event. You know, there'll be 250,000 people there, and
we got to get a couple
will be able to
shirts
scan.
for sure.
Thank you. And there's a woman's cut. There's a women's cut. And a men's cut.
David and I will put on a shirt. We'll order 2 shirts, and I got to get one of those hats too. I like that hat, and it's embroidered too, super high quality. Hell yeah, man, beautiful.
Thank you.
Well, so remind everyone, are you guys on social too? Do y'all have a social handle?
At the _coconut_pirates. So
all of the proceeds from the merchandise go towards this
Tembo Education.
Is Tembo Education a charity organization?
It's a social enterprise, so we have a 501c3 fiscal sponsor, but we also have a for-profit model as well. Nestle is actually our biggest customer, so Nestle pays for children to be educated. Schools, nonprofits, governments can pay for the children to be educated, and then also a parent can just subscribe on their own if they'd like.
And get the app and get the text messages.
No app needed. That's the beauty of it. There's no app required. You just sign up and you can start receiving the text messages.
Wow.
Exactly.
Amazing. The Coconut Pirates, there they are. Go back to the Instagram. I want to plug the details of this thing as we wrap up here. So the actual day of the event is November 9th.
Yes.
Right? And if you follow the _coconut_pirates on social, I'm sure you'll have some announcements about some sort of a party you're doing, anything like that? Yes,
we're doing an after party at American Social right after the event to hopefully celebrate our win. But if nothing else, we'll be celebrating educating children and just celebrate. Oh, there's a little sneak peek of our team, our flight crew, and the Coconut Pirate costumes.
Let's see it, David.
And we didn't reveal the dance yet, but this is like a little meet the team, so you can kind of get an idea.
Give me some music here, David. Da, 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 meet.
So that's our flight crew and pilot, and here's a little sneak preview for your audience of what the pilot will be wearing, since you didn't get to see it there. But if you remember from the Moana Disney movie, Hey, the pilot is going to be your favorite little chicken right here. So
it's so funny you're doing the Moana thing. We literally just watched it 2 days ago at my house with my baby and my wife, and my baby loves it.
Such a great movie.
The chicken's hilarious too. It's like a cross-eyed weird chicken. He's always cranking his head to the side. So you're the pilot.
I'm the pilot.
What's the strategy going into that?
Be the lightest on the team.
Is that literally it? Like, hold on tight.
Hold on tight. When we're going off the flight deck, it's likely going to start heading down, which is normal. So I want to lean back to get a little bit of a tail pickup. And then once it hits ground effect, I start leaning forward, and then hopefully we pick up some lift, because they're going to be running for 105 feet, trying to keep that base straight. And we want it to go as far off that flight deck as possible.
David, show me the flight deck. Scroll down. I think it's on there.
Yes, it's on the homepage.
So does Red Bull call you and say...
Right there.
Does Red Bull tell you that? Like, hey, you're going to want to lean back, in the beginning, and then kind of lean forward?
They don't really give you that much information. You kind of got to find it on your own. But they did have a celebratory kickoff of the Stapler at the Hard Rock Casino. It was awesome. And they go through some of the rules and guidelines, and then they give you some tips like don't use caster wheels, your foam is your friend. They kind of give you hints on what materials to stay away from and which ones to use. So that was very nice, but it's a lot.
It is a lot.
It's a lot of work.
And then the dance too. So you're going to have some sort of a choreographed, funny little 30-second dance.
And if you follow our Instagram, we're going to be revealing some of the sneak peeks beforehand so you can get a taste of what our dance is going to look like. But we've been practicing. And let's just say our team has learned to become a dancer. I don't know if the wives would give us the stamp of approval yet of us being dancers, but
awesome.
We're working on it.
And there's a boat, not a boat parade, but like you can check this out by boat too. Over 200 boats are already registered for this thing.
Already registered. So you can register your boat. It's going to be a great event, 250,000. They're going to have an MC. They're going to have music, food. It's going to be fantastic. And it's going to be
Red
live
Bull
streamed
too. So you know it's going to be
Red Bull.
energetic. It's going to be fun. Yeah. And I'm sure it's going to be live streamed all over the world, right?
And we need it. We just had 2 hurricanes.
I know.
People are recovering.
Yeah.
We needed something fun for the community that's just for Tampa and Tampa alone.
Yeah.
And we have it. And it's happening in 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks. Free too, which is
Free.
awesome. Yeah.
And it's a family event. We're supporting education for children. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Hopefully it's a beautiful day too. We've had great weather lately.
hopefully
it keeps up. Tembo Education. Amazing. Phil, thank you so much. This was
a lot of fun.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, likewise.
Good luck in everything. Yeah, we went over your socials and all that. So follow along, Coconut Pirates. Give them the most important thing in the beginning for the next few days is vote, right?
Vote, yes. Remember, because there's 2 winners. There's the one on competition day, but right now, if you go to our homepage, right at the top of our homepage, if you'll see a little icon with a little coconut pirate and scroll down a little bit, and you'll be able to click Vote Coconuts, and that's where you can vote because we could be the people's choice.
People's choice. thecoconutpirates.com. Vote, everyone. All right, beautiful. All right, bye, everyone.
Thanks,
see you next
Garrett.
week. Hey, guys, if you want to watch episodes just like this one, make sure to click right here to view the rest of our full episodes. And also make sure to subscribe by clicking right here. Thank you for watching.